Welcome to the Anxiety Slayer series. Our mission is to assist you with creating more peace and tranquility in your life through anxiety release exercises and supportive tools created to slay your anxiety. Today's Anxiety Slayer podcast is brought to you by the Anxiety Slayer Academy. We've been offering a free podcast 8 years now to help anyone suffering with anxiety find relief. And now we're helping you go deeper by providing step-by-step support on how you can get the best experience from our favorite tools and techniques for overcoming anxiety. Get your free Anxiety Slayer starter course at anxietyslayer.teachable.com. Welcome back to Anxiety Slayer. I'm Shan Vanderleek here today with my friend and co-host Ananga Sivyer. We come together weekly on Skype to share Anxiety Slayer sessions with you and answer listener questions from our inbox and Facebook page. Together, we share a powerful collection of techniques to reduce anxiety. And today we're addressing a listener question: can you get rid of false anxiety? Welcome back, Ananga.
Hi, Shan.
What is false anxiety?
Well, we recently recorded a podcast on fear, which are the initials for a very important statement for anxiety slayers to keep in mind, and that is false evidence appearing real. And we received a response on our Facebook page from one of our friends who said the worst part about learning what false anxiety is learning that you pretty much can only manage it. I don't know or haven't heard of anyone who's actually got rid of false anxiety. I call it false anxiety because it's things we believe in that cause our bodies to go into that mode. It's normal to have anxiety during normal situations, but we get them during no situations.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, it's a really good observation and very typical of the horrible nature of anxiety, because when we can find cause, we feel that we have something to work with. We don't like uncertainty, and uncertainty certainly increases anxiety.
And you and I have talked many times about knowing that it is possible to get beyond it. The reason why we do what we do and share the resources that we share and have been in partnership for this long is because we know that you can bring yourself relief.
It is possible. Very often the anxious mind objects to having to manage a situation. Anxiety objects to the whole situation in the first place. Usually when we suffer from anxiety, we will say that I just don't want to feel like this. I don't want to have to deal with it. And I'm not happy that this is happening in my life. And there's a certain acceptance that comes in the first stage of healing with anxiety, where we make acceptance and we make peace with the fact that we're going to have to invest some time in some self-care and looking after ourselves and coming down from red alert. Life will bring us anxiety, but we can learn to be undisturbed by anxiety, both false and real, using the tools that we talk about in Ayurveda, breathing and EFT tapping. It is possible to bring ourselves down off red alert, where we can feel much calmer about whatever life throws at us. So I wanted to share something personal about my own experience with anxiety in the hope of offering some hope to others. I've lived with anxiety all my life. In my early years, my teens and early 20s, it was appalling. It would make me shake and sweat. Sometimes it would make me throw up. I couldn't eat in front of other people. I couldn't hold a drink in front of other people because my hands would shake. If I went out for a meal, I would have to wait until people left the room before I could lift food to my mouth because I was so shaky and so worried that people would notice that I was shaky. But for me, these days, if I'm going through a challenging time, my anxiety will still try and fire off. If I'm unwell or I'm going through some intense life events, as we all do, and over recent years I've been through some quite intense experiences. So anxiety will try and fire off in my body, but in my experience, it's very, very different now. It feels like a firework that won't go off. There's like the initial fizz and, oh my God. And I've almost felt like I could have a panic attack, but I never do. It just fizzes and stops. It will spark for a second or two, and I can feel it in my body, but I have the space and the tools to observe it and breathe with it, and it passes. So it's nothing like it used to be. The mind will always try and show us anxiety. That's the nature of the mind. And the mind will sometimes interrupt us in our quieter moments. And we have that horrible thing of, okay, this anxiety is coming from nowhere, and that's really ruining my life. The mind will sometimes try and do that. But as we discussed a couple of weeks ago in our podcast, we can get to a point where we don't react and we don't listen to its propaganda.
And that is such a beautiful place when you can identify that awareness and to say, okay, well, there it is. I'm going to let that float by now. I'm going to let that go and move forward. And then if it doesn't, if it wants to hang on, then you start to do one of the practices that you know how to do. And if we have a cold, we have to take care of it, right?
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee that we won't get another one. But if we know how to care for ourselves when we have a cold, it won't be so severe or last so long. This is the same thing with anxiety.
It is. It's more difficult because it's more subtle. When you have a runny nose and a cough, you can see what's going on. Other people can see what's going on. You can see when somebody has a cold. You can't always see when somebody has anxiety. So it's the subtle nature of anxiety that makes it a lot more difficult to manage and deal with. But once you start noticing your symptoms, you can start noticing the rumbles of anxiety way back before it spikes. And you can adjust your breathing and adjust your thinking and completely stop it blowing up into an episode.
And here are some other things that are going to help you. The first stage in recovery from any heightened anxiety is to come down from what you said is that red alert feeling. And this is where we want to avoid stimulants, caffeine, coffee, energy drinks. Just take those right out of the equation. You're also going to want to avoid confrontation wherever possible. Give yourself some peaceful time and stay away from folks in your life who might be energy vampires or people who like high drama. And speaking of drama, avoid drama in the form of intense movies and things that can be unsettling. It's really, really important that all of the choices that you make are sweet for your mind, body, and soul.
It's so important. And sometimes our mind will object and say, well, I like my coffee. And it's all very well to say that, but I can't get going without my cup of coffee in the morning. But coffee spikes the heart rate. Coffee can make us feel very unsettled and very anxious, so it's worth experimenting with alternatives. We might like coffee, we might like intense movies, but they might not like our mind, and they might not be good for our mind. So sometimes we just have to start sifting through and making choices that better support us.
And there are just so many. The next stage after being mindful of what we're taking in is working with supporting yourself through several of the tools and techniques that we talk about and starting to use them and practice with them every day, ideally several times a day, little bits here and there. And certainly you're welcome, if you haven't done so already, to check out our free starter course at anxietyslayer.teachable.com, which will help you get started. And then while you're there, you can pick one or two techniques from the course or follow along with some of our guided exercises every day for a month, and then check back in and see how you're doing.
Yeah, try making it an experiment, even though anxiety will object initially and the mind will object initially. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, how we often talk, Shan, about the Pitta mind in Ayurveda, the intelligent, discriminating, discerning mind type in Ayurveda will often say, this is ridiculous. This is what's happening in my body. This is what's happening in my mind. And you're telling me to breathe? This is crazy. Pitta doesn't like what seems like irrational solutions or too small solutions or suggestions that don't seem to meet the enormity of the problem. And the example we often use with that is if you burn your hand, there's nothing as simple as cold water. And that's exactly what you need to stop the burning sensation. So some of these techniques, they are simple, but that doesn't mean they don't work. They do work, and we have to get past the objections of the anxious mind. The anxious mind will always say, you don't understand, you don't know how bad it is, this won't work for me. So we're throwing down the challenge. Try it. Try the experiment. Try it for a month. Get the free course. Try some of the exercises. And I recommend getting a habit tracking app on your phone. And you can get one called Streaks, or that's one I use. I can't remember any of the other names at the moment. But there are several life tracking apps you can get for free for a phone, where you set a few goals, your own goals, and you tick them off when you do them. So it could be a breathing practice, an EFT tapping session, a walk in nature, making sure you keep hydrated. I would recommend including all 4 of those. And the app will remind you and ask you at the end of the day, did you do your breathing? Did you do your tapping? Just see how many times you can tick those practices off in the course of a month and keep the streak going. And then let us know on our Facebook page, how did you do? What changed for you after a month of taking the challenge?
And remember, you don't have anything to lose by just trying this out. You have everything to gain. So check it out, communicate with us, let us know how you're doing, and know that we've got your backs. We're here to support you in any way we can.
Get everything you need to start slaying your anxiety today. Visit anxietyslayer.teachable.com to claim our free Anxiety Slayer starter course. You get 4 guided sessions, including an EFT tapping session, guided breathing practice, and special module on overcoming the fear of anxiety. Don't just listen to the Anxiety Slayer podcast. Become an Anxiety Slayer. Claim your free Anxiety Slayer starter course at anxietyslayer.teachable.com.